Hey guys, welcome back to One All's Pub. All right, tonight, sliding across the bar top, we have the small Sebenza, a brace of them actually. So let's talk about them. If you watched my knife philosophy downsizing video recently, Bert, please post a link. You've seen these knives before. As I've kind of been converting my EDC preferences to smaller knives lately, I knew I would have to get a small Sebenza. I'd had one before and gotten rid of it because I thought it was too small, and now, just whether I'm just preferences are changing or maturing in my EDC, I don't know, but I really wanted to give it another try. As I mentioned previously, Rob over the Apostle P channel recommended this time I get it with micarta to give it a little bit more of a hand-filling feel, and so I've done that and on both of them, and really does help the in-hand feel of this knife for me personally. That said, I think my opinions and preferences have changed enough that a regular plain old small would probably be fine in my hand now too. I think my previous kind of opinion of that, because I had one and then sold it because I just couldn't quite, just didn't quite like the way it felt in hand. It felt a little bit too small for me. I think now with my preferences changing, I think I would actually be okay with it. But that said, I love the way the micarta looks. I think it looks great, and on the small, I think it's preferable from an aesthetic perspective. But it also definitely does give you a little bit more hand fillingness or whatever, I guess. Just feels a little bit better in the hand, helps to fill that out, and I really do like that. And plus, on the small knife, and this is kind of something that I didn't really get into in my video about smaller knives and downsizing my EDC knives, is that small knives, for whatever reason, they have a certain I'll call it a je ne sais quoi, a certain something to them that that a bigger knife doesn't always have, and by that I mean that the small knife, because especially on something like a Sebenza, let me qualify that. Because the Sebenza is really just a shrunken down version of its big brother, the large, a small Sebenza is. The small has this this quality and this character to it that, because it's small and still so precise, it takes on this kind of this miniature quality to it. This feeling of or perspective of it's taking something and like if you see, this is crazy, but if you see like a ship in a bottle and it's a great big one, it's impressive that they do that, right? But then you see when somebody does it like in a little bitty scale, you're like, wow, the detail work on that is just amazing. And you can't hardly help but be a little bit enthralled, at least I can't help but be a little bit enthralled with the miniaturization and how well it was done. You take the large, which is just a fabulous knife, and then you miniaturize it, and you come up with these two guys, and all of the attributes that are in the large, let's go ahead and put them out here. All the attributes that are in the large remain here. You don't lose anything other than just the size. I mean, but you don't sacrifice anything in overall quality or presentation or dimensions and all that. I mean, it's just like they shrunk it, and it's just got this certain something that, like I said, a small Sebenza, a certain je ne sais quoi, that is just is very appealing to me, and it really hit me. And as I moved into smaller knives, it was the Sebenza that really made me that really made me realize that kind of cool, miniaturized smallness that was very appealing. I don't know. I'm not explaining it well, and I know I can't because I haven't figured it out myself yet. But I just know that it has this appeal to me, especially with the micarta, when the way it's just so precisely fit on this small knife. If you've ever done work in with your hands, and we all take our knives apart and whatnot. On the bigger knives, that's a lot easier because the bigger area you're working with, the smaller knives and smaller screws, it's just the level of precision that you have to have in your fingers to do it, and just everything is just, I notice the difference when I'm working on a big knife versus a small knife. And so when I see the detail, I notice that as well. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. Sorry, guys. To the knives themselves, much like the large clip point and the large Insingo have a little bit of a different aesthetic in how the blade disappears into the handle. The small is the exact same way. As I was kind of saying, it's just the shrunken down versions. And I do have to say, from closed, the aesthetic of the way that that the clip point just disappears into the handle gives it that old classy, I've said this before in videos, kind of an old Jaguar look to it, or an old like C2 Vet or C3 Vet even look to it, kind of with the swoopy fenders and whatnot. That aesthetic still is just perfect and perfectly translated into the small size as well. And it's just aesthetically so pleasing to me. I just love to look at it. The Insingo closed doesn't have that. With the way that you're just the shape of the blade doesn't allow that, and it doesn't dip into the handle like the clip point does. That said, when the two blades are open, aesthetics are, it's tough to pick. Honestly, I'm a Wharncliffe guy, so I want to say I like the Insingo better, but at the same time, I really like the clip point too. It's a tough call. Probably, maybe, just barely the Insingo blade, maybe, depending on my mood. I don't know. They're just so close. But if I had to pick, I guess maybe in the open position, the Insingo is maybe a little more appealing. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure I can tell you. Both do have double lugs. I picked this one up used on Blade Forums and got a screaming good deal on it. The only bummer was it did not come with a box or paperwork or anything like that. But that was one of the reasons I got such a great deal on it. And it did have double lugs, so I was a little nervous about getting a double lug knife because I figured, oh gosh, you know what's going to happen. Now my other Sebenzas that are single lugs are going to have to go back for the upgrade, and I've said as much already, and I'm pretty sure I'll be doing that because I really, really enjoy that. It's so fun to Spidey flick them. Don't give me any guff about flicking open a Sebenza. And speaking of opening a Sebenza, the small is actually a little bit nicer to thumb flick open like that. It's not that you can't do it with the large or that I can't do it with the large. Clearly I can, and it's not difficult by any stretch of the imagination, but the geometry, at least for my hand, is a little bit better. It's a little bit less effortless, or excuse me, a little bit less effort, a little bit more effortless, a little bit, don't have to really think about it at all. It can just flip it open without even thinking. Spidey flick it as well. And that's kind of nice. And just in general, the 3-inch size, or excuse me, the 3-inch bladed size, the small Sebenza size, just all around is kind of a more dexterous knife in your hand. For me, it's 4 full fingers. I can get everything on there. You can see it's a perfect grip for me. It's every bit of knife I'd ever need on a daily basis. And even from a self-defense perspective, it's not like a 3-inch. Now, but another 1/2 inch or so on there be better, yeah. But it's not like I don't have a good handle on this knife. It's not like it's in any danger coming out of my hand, and it's not like that's not. It couldn't be put into service from a self-defense perspective. So it's really all the knife you need. And I've heard other reviewers say the small is all the knife you need, and the large is all the knife you want. And maybe that's actually a pretty good definition of it, which is why I guess I have both. Now, another thing about the small is, and speaking to that dexterity, is that it really allows for really excellent tip control, other than just holding it like this, which is kind of the classic way you hold a knife. If you want to go saber grip, that's okay too. Hammer grip, excuse me. Saber grip's great, hammer grip's great. But this grip right here, where you kind of choke up on the tip and you really can come right to the edge, you have incredible tip control. And that's especially true like on the Insingo, where I can really get that tip into stuff very nicely. Again, just a more dexterous knife than the large, just in use, which is nice, which is actually true about smaller knives in general, which is kind of one of the things I think that's finally made me kind of start to realize and rediscover my love for these smaller knives, is that they're so handy, so easy to use, so easy to carry. So it's just, and another kind of thing that I've noticed too is, just when I actually do a lot of cutting, like cardboard cutting or something like that, I actually hold the knife more like this in kind of a pinch grip. Now that's great for doing a lot of different kinds of cuts, but up here holding it like this and actually doing a lot of hard cutting like this, I actually really don't. Most of my hard cutting I do like this. Like if I'm cutting through a lot of cardboard, sorry, didn't mean to bump the tripod there. If I'm cutting through a lot of cardboard, I hold the knife like this, where the middle finger comes right into that little finger choil, and the root of my first finger here, of my index finger, comes right up on top of the knife. And it allows me then to present all the power of my arm in a linear, in a straight line right to that root of that knuckle, which allows for really nice, powerful cuts for breaking down a lot of cardboard. That's how I do it. It harkens back to my jiu-jitsu training for many years. As some of you may or may not know, I've trained in jiu-jitsu now for 23, almost 24 years now, and being able to apply power in a grip, jiu-jitsu grip, from your body through your hand is that particular spot right there is very important. And so that translates to my knife technique as well. While we all hold a knife like this and go, oh yeah, the jimping's great, and I want to hold it like this, and I really never cut like this if I'm doing hard cutting. If I'm cutting like kitchen, doing some food prep or something like that, maybe. But even then, I'm probably doing it this way because I get more. This way, I have more distance and I have to come up more. Here, I have more control. It's just a preferred cut, or handle or cutting technique for me. So the small is so nice in that regard. Now the large is the same way. I can certainly do the same thing with the large. That's not a problem. But just a minor tutorial there on cutting technique from One Owl's Pub, I guess. But I just found it to be incredibly. That's the word that just comes to mind. Dexterous, and really useful and easy to use in your hand. Same with the Insingo. And like I said, if anything, it allows me to present that tip a little bit easier. Man, my lighting is just having issues tonight in the pub, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. I'll try. Maybe I can roll this around and get a little bit better. It's just every time I roll my hand in there, it just darkens. My camera's just playing tricks with me, I guess. Anyway, boy, look at that. I mean, stick that Insingo tip right into the work you're doing. Isn't that nice? And that's one of the benefits of the Insingo. It's got such great utility. Both of these knives, from an aesthetic perspective, other than the blade, are virtually the same with the micarta inlays. They do have a little bit different micarta pattern to them, and I probably should have Windexed these guys up and got them nice and clean before I did the review, or the video here. But this one is more like, maybe I can show it more in here, like the large Insingo here. If you can see the pattern here, and it's got kind of a denim look to it. My gosh, the lighting is just being terrible on me tonight. I'm sorry, guys. It looks like old denim, and I said as much in my review of this knife. And that's the same with this guy, whereas this one's more of a streaky kind of micarta pattern to it. My preference is more this kind initially. I mean, that's what if I could just have one, I'd want this. But when I got this one, it's a little dark now from being carried so much lately. But this one has that same kind of old denim look to it. You can see. When I went to order this one, I thought, boy, do I want to go through the effort of calling up and saying, hey, can you pick me out one that looks like this kind of micarta and whatnot? And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to order it and let it fly, and we'll see what happens. And if I get one like this, so be it. And if I get one that's more this streaky kind, that's cool too, because then I'll have a little bit more variety. So guess what? It arrived like this, and I'm actually glad it did. Like I said, I kind of think I dig the variety. So, at any rate, other than that, the aesthetic on them is identical, other than the blade and a little bit of the micarta pattern difference. They were both. If you take these knives apart, this one has a. Let's here. Let me get a C13 scale on the frame, or on the presentation side, and a B13 scale on the lock side. So it's probably built in, honestly, it's probably built in sometime in 2014 with those scales. This one was built in 2014. This is a November 2014. Again, this one is used, and I don't have the paperwork for it because it didn't come with a box or any of the paperwork. This one, if you can see there, which you probably can't, this scale, again, C13, and this one C13. So these were both built in the third quarter of 13. And this was a November 2014 built knife. So this one being a C13 and a B13 is probably also, in all honesty, it's probably a November, or excuse me, a 2014 knife as well. So the reason I bring that up is just because I said they are so similar in aesthetics. The depth to the and you do see some variation on this sometimes in the in Sebenzas. The depth of the Idaho made stamp, or the depth of this the Chris Reeve logo here, and even kind of the sandblasting is very similar in texture and whatnot. This one's new, or brand new, and this one was used, but not very used at all. So it does have a little bit, a little bit more of a worn look. Not worn, but it's had some palm time. So it's that blasting kind of mutes itself from a lot of finger time, and this one will too. They feel, when you feel them, the tactility is the same. There's a little bit different feel or look to this one, but I'm sure it'll end up looking like this one in a few months. When I first got this one, it was really shiny and kind of had that real sparkly look to it, and it's muted itself up quite a bit now. I bought this one brand new, and I actually handpicked this one out at the Monkey Edge here locally. So the Insingo itself, though, very cool knife, very cool blade shape. Ironically, though, the Insingo is quite, I don't know if you can see this, but it is quite a bit thicker ground than the clip point. The Insingo's over here. If you get in there, you can, and I don't know if the video is going to play off for this as well for you, but in real life you can certainly see it, and you can certainly feel it. It's much thinner ground, the clip point is, than the Insingo. And you can, like I said, visually it's very easy to see in person. I don't know whether that you're catching all that. Got some crud in there, both of these. You can tell they get some pocket time. I've been carrying these things pretty much non-stop or extremely regularly since getting them. But anyway, the clip point, if anything, is the better slicer of the two because of its thinness. And another thing I've noticed, my previous, look at that double lugs open that left-handed. Isn't that cool? Another thing I noticed, my previous clip point small that I had a really stout tip on it. I mean, really, it was thicker than a large 21's tip. Now, though, and that knife I think was actually made in my original one, just the plain Jane small clip point. I think it was like a 2011 or 2012 knife. I don't remember off the top of my head now. But it was quite a bit stouter tip-wise. I mean, significantly so. But now you can see that Chris Reeve has actually toned that down quite a bit, and the tips on his smalls is very much matches up to size-wise and everything to the tips on the large. So, whereas, like I said, they used to be quite chunky, and you can watch some YouTube video reviews on this knife, and you'll see some comments about over the last 3 or 4 years, you'll see comments about how thick the tip is on the small. But he's actually changed that now, which does make the tip a little bit more delicate, but that's hardly a delicate tip. It's still got some good meat to it down here, but it'll make it a much better piercer and a much better cutter all around at the tip there. So that's just another interesting thing that that my clip point is actually the thinner ground and probably the ultimate better slicer. And the Insingo is probably a little bit stouter blade all around. So just the luck of the draw, the way it happens. But ergonomically, they're exactly the same, of course, and as they should be, because they're both sized the same. Smoothness, both butter smooth, free dropping, and free focusing. There we go. Look at how that just bounces off the nail. You know that's smooth when it just bounces off the nail like that. Absolutely rock solid, no play, any way, shape, or form. Just beautiful. No lock stick. With just that. Actually, this one doesn't even have that classic Chris Reeve kind of hydraulic, just ever so slight bit of stick. The clip point doesn't even have that. This one does, just a hint of it. Not as much as on either one of my two largest, just a hint of it. This one also free dropping. Bounces off the nail, so nice. This one is a little bit, it's brand new, so it's a little bit stiffer, just barely, than this guy. When I first got it, it was really pretty stiff. I took it apart and re-greased it up, and it still was pretty stiff. I thought I was going to have to probably take it apart and do the old washer polish thing on it. And I was actually on my way last Saturday morning to go to the hardware store to pick up some 1000 grit wet dry sandpaper to do that. And I took this along, threw it in my pocket on Saturday. I got in, I started funneling, and it just smoothed up. It finally just kind of broke into that spot. So it's still not quite as smooth as this one, but not enough for me to worry about taking it apart and polishing and doing all that, because they may never be exactly the same as far as the feel goes. But they may break in some more too. Again, this one has had some pocket time, and it was carried some by the previous owner for sure. So this one also has a significantly stronger detent. It takes and if I play with them back and forth is when I can really notice. If I just have this in my pocket alone, I don't notice it as much. But when I'm just going from one to the other, the Insingo does have a significantly stronger detent. It actually has a stronger detent than that one or than this one. My two larges. You might be asking, two larges? Well, I thought you had three larges. What about Snake Plissken, the Snakewood large Sebenza? Yeah, well, Snake's no longer with us. I sold him. When I knew I was going to, after I got this and I knew I wanted to get a small Insingo to match up to it, finances just did not allow me to have 5 Sebenzas. So Snake had to escape from New York, as it were. Although I don't live in New York, but you get the point. So I sold him to a good home, and he's happily ensconced in his new home. So anyway, so he's gone. So anyway, so I just have the 4 now, and it's kind of a classic match. You have your large, you have your small. Let's see if I can fit all these on here. I don't know if I can get them all in the view here. Your small clip point, your small Insingo, your large clip point, and your large Insingo, or whatever order you want to talk about them in there. I'm cutting off a little bit here. I don't knock Bird off his Trans Am again. There we go. So that's my Sebenza collection now. And I'm pretty happy with it. One of each in both sizes. The Tonto, the Christopher Tonto doesn't do anything for me. I'm not that big of a Tonto guy, so I'm not going to bother going there. Both of these are Micarta because I just like the Micarta and the smalls for sure. This one in Micarta because I wanted a large Micarta. And you might say, oh, you got the one rogue dude here that's just a plain Jane. You should sell him and get a Micarta. Actually no, because I really like the way the plain Jane feels in the large. And I just want to maintain that. I want to keep one of these. I just love that velvet of the titanium. I love the way the Micarta feels as well. Don't get me wrong. I want one of each. I didn't want one of each in these. I definitely wanted the Micarta in the smalls. So anyway, like I said, great in hand, classic, supreme Chris Reeve quality. Both have been put on the wicked edge. Get a little bit of color. I've got a red shirt on so you can see it reflecting there. Very nice, huh? Oh, and one other thing I kind of wanted to cover. I covered this in the original video that I did, or not the original, but in the downsizing video that I did. I talked about, the cutting edge differences in these two knives. And it's what you'd expect because based on the overall size of the blade, they should be as they are, and indeed that's true. They are exactly what you'd expect. But here's an interesting thing. Large Sebenzas aside, let me put those guys back here in my Pelican case. Let's pull out something like a Paramilitary 2. And let's compare that to a small Sebenza, just from a cutting edge perspective. Look at that. That's the difference you're giving up to carry a small. Now you're paying more money for the small Sebenza than the Paramilitary 2, but just from a cutting tool perspective, you're not giving up much for size wise. The Paramilitary 2 is hardly a heavy knife. It's a large knife. It's got a large handle. You got plenty of handle space there, and you got plenty of blade. Almost, I think it's almost 3.5. It's just under 3.43 or something like that. But and they give you the great finger choil in a Paramilitary 2, so you have some benefits for sacrificing that blade length, or the cutting edge length. But but the way that the Para 2 starts, it's cutting edge. You lose. You don't optimize the cutting edge on this knife, and on the Sebenza you do. Again, look at that. I mean, that is all the difference you're giving up. What is that? 1/16 of an inch, maybe an eighth. Not an eighth. I don't know. Very little as far as actual cutting edge. How does the single match up against that? Kind of a stranger process, a little bit of a different look because of the yeah. So it's harder to gauge that because of the blade shapes are so different. This is a better comparison because you end up with maybe an eighth of an inch. Because you end up with similar blade shapes here as far as belly goes. So you save yourself about an ounce in overall carry. You get an all titanium knife. You get micarta. Here you get G10 and about an ounce more. And bigger blade and a cool lock for sure. It's not that the Para 2 is not fun to fondle and great to have in the pocket. It is. But from a cutting tool perspective, you're really not giving up much to carry this little knife. Again, purely just from a cutting tool perspective. And it's a Sebenza, you know what I'm saying? So it's always nice to have that in your pocket. If you like titanium and micarta, which I do. So, small Sebenzas, small knives, small EDC. That can do big time work. And cost big time money, let's be honest. These are a couple of knives that, if you're a Sebenza fan and you just kind of have larges, and I get it, believe me, I totally get it. I didn't think I wanted these, but now that I have them, I wouldn't give them up. I think that long term, these will see probably more actual EDC pocket time than the larges will, just because they're so easy to carry. And they really are, again, like I said, dexterous in use. They're so easy to use on a daily basis and so easy to use during actual cutting tasks, at least the stuff that I do. Small Sebenza 21 with micarta inlays, one of each. What do you think, Bert? Yeah, me too. All right, guys, that's $1 2 cents. Keep the change. Sláinte.